Is your team currently in a tie for the wildcard spot? Maybe a tie for the division. Hell, maybe you're tied in the division and for a wildcard spot. What if you win the division but tie another team when it comes to seeding? What do we do? How will we know who gets seeded where in the playoffs if 6 teams have the same record? Well, today we will go over the 12-step process, and not the 12-step process to get over an addiction to a sport that only brings you sadness and high blood pressure. The 12-step process the NFL uses to ensure proper seeding in the playoffs. Let's get into it. Today we will be going over the procedure for tie-breaking a wildcard spot and for seeding in the playoffs. We're going to use the 2019 AFC as the example with just 2 adjustments to the season to make it a 6-way tie. In another video, I'll go over divisional tie-breaking and we'll be using the NFC South from 2022 as the example. In 2019, the AFC had its 5th seed go to the Bills and the 6th seed go to the Tennessee Titans. In 2020, the NFL added the extra wildcard spot to the playoff picture. For our scenario today to work out, we will assume the NFL made this change a year early and we have 3 AFC teams going to the wildcard playoffs in 2019. Now, we only have one more assumption to make and we will land at a perfect 6-way tie for the last wildcard spots, and we can go over exactly how these tie-breaking procedures will function in the NFL. At 8-8, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. At 7-9, we have the Colts, Broncos, Raiders, and Jets. And at 6-10, we have the Browns. Well, on December 1st, 2019, the Browns traveled to Pittsburgh and originally had lost 13-20. In our scenario of chaos, all we need to assume is that the Browns made one more field goal and that Boswell on the Steelers had an awful day and missed his 2 kicks, making the score now 16-14, Browns winning. Now all 6 teams are tied for the last wildcard spot at 7-9. Let's run this new what-if scenario of pure chaos through the procedures and see what we get. Step 1 in the procedures to apply the divisional tiebreakers for the Steelers and the Browns and the Raiders and the Broncos, as you can only have a maximum of 4 teams make it to step 2 here. With this said, let's do the AFC North first. Well, since I made the Browns win over the Steelers on December 1st and the matchup in Cleveland on November 14th, the Browns already won without any help. The Browns will move forward with the head-to-head matchup. Raiders and Broncos in the AFC West split the head-to-head. So divisional step 2, it is. Win-loss for the games in the division. Well, 3 wins and 3 losses for each team here, so on to step 3, best win-loss percentage in common games. Each team had faced the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Bears, Packers, Lions, Vikings, Jaguars, Titans, and Colts. The Broncos were 4-7 in these games, and the Raiders went 5-6. Well, looky here. Looks like the Raiders get to advance. But don't worry, Broncos, we'll get back to you eventually. Grab yourself a fresh subscription to TSST. Teams left for step 2 of the wildcard tiebreaker are now the Browns, the Raiders, the Colts, and the Jets. Now it's head-to-head. With 4 teams, this only applies if one team has swept all 3 others and then they take the spot, or if one team has lost to all the other teams. Then they are eliminated. All these teams, however, did not play each other, so we move immediately to step 3, to the win-loss for the conference games. Colts have a conference record of 5-7, Jets 4-8, Raiders 5-7, and the Browns 7-5. And that's that, folks. In our hypothetical example, the Browns take the last wildcard spot that didn't actually exist in 2019. If you were to want to know the exact order, you would take the remaining teams and redo the process with the Steelers added back in since the Browns took the last spot. The Broncos would remain out since the Raiders would still be in on this process. So let's see who gets first runners up. Again, no head-to-head winners, and the Steelers also went 5-7 in the conference games. Well, this means that with a record of 4-8 in the conference, the Jets get the boot out of the contention right now. We will continue to the next step with the Steelers, Colts, and Broncos. Step 4 is to find the best win-loss tie percentage of all common games. This includes a minimum of 4 games to work. We also use the percentage due to the fact that some teams will play each other twice due to divisional games. Common games for all 3 teams are the Chargers. Well, that's not 4. So moving on to step 5. And this is where it starts to get weird, folks. Now we have strength of victory to be the decider. We now need to take the records of all the opponents each of our 3 teams have beaten and add these together. And stay with me here, guys. Colts get a strength of victory of 56 and 56. That's 50%. Not bad. The Steelers would get 35 and 76 and 1, 31.7%. And the Raiders with 37 and 74, a perfect third. Well, this makes the Colts our next runner-up here. Now we need to take the Steelers and Raiders and restart the process back at head-to-head matchup, which they did not play each other. Conference is still a tie. Next is common games. However, they only had 3 of those, and the minimum is 4. These were the Bengals, Chargers, and Colts. Make sure you spike that like button. And back at strength of victory, we are left with the Raiders taking it over the Steelers. All of this chaos to give us the current order: the Browns, the Colts, the Raiders, and then the Jets probably in the last place. Well, now we have the Steelers, but we need to bring the Broncos back in the stands. And this would also include the Jets back in as well. Still no head-to-heads. Conference games have the Steelers 5-7, Jets 4-8, and Broncos 6-6. And would you look at that? Broncos get the next best spot, the Jets stuck again at last, and that leaves the Steelers placed right in the middle of these 3. Now our current order is Browns with the final wild card, followed by the Colts, the Raiders, the Broncos, Steelers, and lastly, the Jets. Well, maybe someday we can get this far or farther in the tiebreakers, but what if? What if we assume the Steelers and Raiders had tied at 35-77 and we don't even bother with the Broncos, just for fun? Well, the next step on the list is strength of schedule in all games. What strength of schedule is adding the records of all the teams faced in a year. So it'd be similar to the strength of victory, just with the losses added as well. So the Steelers would have 130, 125, and 1, and the Raiders would have 123 to 132. The Steelers clearly still take this one. But let's just assume it tied again, just to keep this going. Step 7. Best combined ranking among conference teams in points scored and points allowed. This one sounds confusing, and it is at first, but it's more simple than you might think. You might be tempted to think it's just a point differential, but that's too easy. This is not what the NFL states. Add a team's position in the 2 categories, and the lowest score wins. For example, if Team A is first in points scored and second in points allowed, its combined ranking is 3. If Team B is third in points scored and first in points allowed, its combined ranking is 4. Team A then wins the tiebreaker. So if we apply this, we get the Steelers 13 in scoring, 4 in points allowed, totaling 17. The Raiders are 10th in scoring and 14 in points allowed, totaling 24. Steelers clearly win this one. But let's go to step 8, which is the same as this step, but all teams. So now we have that the Steelers are number 27 in scoring and number 6 in points allowed, giving us a total of 33. The Raiders are 24th in scoring and 24th in points allowed, giving a total of 48. The Steelers win yet again, but I'm having fun. Step 9 and 10. Step 9 and 10 are just like the last 2 steps, but without all the adding. It's just the net points in all conference games for step 9 and all games for step 10. So all we have to do is take the first number of points scored, which means the Raiders actually win conference and all games, with 10th and 24th respectively, to the Steelers 13th and 27th. Only 2 more steps, folks. Step 11 is total touchdowns for each team. Steelers got 18 and the Raiders have 22, so the Raiders win this step as well. But with one final assumption of these teams somehow tying, yet again, we move to the final step. It's heads. Raiders win. Last step is literally a coin flip, because the madness must end somewhere. This whole procedure seems longer than it needs to be, but I guess that's the point. The bases are covered forever this way. The likelihood of needing the coin flip is hilariously small, but that's a good thing. If you make this process only 6 steps, you might actually need the coin flip, and the last steps get pretty simple overall. So even though it feels like a standard NFL being overcomplicated thing, I'm gonna give the NFL some props for avoiding the coin toss, and Bills fans, you're welcome. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. It took a huge amount of work to put together. Let me know in the comments if I should do more explainers like this in the future, and most of all, make sure you have a great day.